Welcome to round 3. This is a sealed league for Shadows over Innistrad, and okay, I'm going to keep this. It might be a sketchy keep. I like having a turn 1 and a turn 2 play that are actually pretty aggressive between a Menace 1/1 as well as the 3/3 Skulk, and I can also dump a land in the graveyard, which is going to help with our Delirium in this deck. So maybe it's a little sketchy keep, and obviously whenever you keep a heavy land hand, you're going to draw another land, as we did with Swamp. So so we'll see where this goes. I mean, I could definitely see mulliganing this as well, but alright, Skin Invasion. I mean, a little awkward for our opponent. I mean, since the Neonite has Menace, but at the same time, I assume they're trying to keep us from doing some sort of madness shenanigans early on. So that makes sense, I think. So we'll attack in because we have to. And we'll go ahead and put our Pale Rider out. We also drew a Sin Prodder, which is a great turn 3. We'll continue to stay on curve and just do some pretty delinquent things here. So now we do need to draw into some heat, but of course the Sin Prodder might help with that, or at the very least damage our opponent a little bit if they're trying to keep us off some cards. So that's actually a pretty big draw for us here. Okay, so our opponent gets a 4/1. Now, that can't block either of our creatures, but it could trade 4 for 4 damage and get larger when it hits us, so that's a little awkward. Now, I could just to the slaughter, and I think that's what I'm going to do. Let's just get rid of this 4/1 that potentially could get bigger and just keep pounding in for 4. I think that's just the play here, but I could see also trying to hold on to the slaughter for extra value later on in case our opponent has a Planeswalker. It just feels like I've seen a lot of Planeswalkers, considering there's 4 of them in the set, so there's a chance our opponent could be playing with one of them. But I think for now, I think the right thing to do, especially considering we have Sin Prodder next turn now, is just to beat down and try to get a little advantage. If we get our opponent down a little bit, they're going to be less likely to take the burn and let us keep the second card, which is pretty good. Alright, 3/2 Flyer. Now this can block our 3/3 Skulk, but it can't block the Neonite yet due to the Menace. Of course, we draw yet another land, which is crazy, but Sin Prodder hopefully will help with this situation, as long as it can stay alive, right? So we have to attack in, that's fine. I'm going to hold back our Pale Rider. I could offer up the trade here, but if our opponent's got 3 other creatures in their hand, or they have some heat, they may take the trade happily. I just don't want to risk that. I don't mind taking 3 in the air, and if our opponent happens to hit to make it a 5/4, that's okay too, because we can crack back with quite a bit as well at this point. So I don't know, I'm not too concerned. The Sin Prodder also has Menace, so that's awkward for our opponent. Well, there you go. Okay, so our opponent can attack in now. If we block it, we lose a creature and they get a 3/4. If we don't block it, we take 3, and then, of course, they can just discard a card to sacrifice it, and I'm sure that's what they'll do. So he's going to come in. Our opponent's going to come in for 6 here. But now we should start getting some value, at least, hopefully. We'll see what we get here. Alright, so our opponent is a 3/4. Again, kind of awkward considering we have a 3/2 Menace. He can block... Our opponent can block the Skulk creature, though. So that doesn't help us much. Alright, so our opponent gave us both cards. Guess they weren't worried about the card draw potential there, but considering we have so much land, that's actually really good for us. But for right now anyway, I'm just going to play the Incorrigible Use and just try to get some damage across. Now at this point, I don't mind presenting a situation for a trade necessarily with the Use. If our opponent wants to just go down to having a 3/2 Flyer, I'm fine with that, and that's what they're going to do. And they kind of have to. I mean, they'd be taking 7 if they didn't do that. Difference from being at 7 and 11 is actually quite big, also considering I have the Sin Prodder, and there may be something I need to take out of my hand. They don't hit the flip. Gonna draw some cards though, so that's always good. The only good news for us though is it pretty much ties up their mana now. Opponent will get to untap 2 lands, but they'll still have mana tied up. At least most of their mana tied up. Okay, that's good. Can't block, so I'm happy with that. I can deal with that. Now, if we just draw into another land, we can just Merciless Resolve here. Wicker Witch. Also awkward for our opponent because if they threw the Wicker Witch in the graveyard, we have Delirium. Now that doesn't impact anything right now, but they have to be thinking about that. So they give us the Wicker Witch. It's going to give us yet another creature and also the ability to sacrifice a land and draw some cards, which they also handed us that card as well. Sim Prowler is just so hard to deal with because you could argue, well, they would have been down 6 more life. They would have been at 2 if they didn't give me the cards, but at the same time, I would have had a lot less going on. So, I don't know. It's kind of like a lose-lose situation, I think. We get ourselves a Macabre Waltz, which is also pretty crazy. Allow us to just take 2 creatures just right back from the graveyard. And I can either toss another land, or if I'm concerned about Delirium, I could toss the Wicker Witch. But I don't know. I don't have anything right now. So I'm just going to toss the land. And there we go. And there's a nice blocker if we need it. Just a chump block. Could also use it as an enabler to put down a cheap Incorrigible Use if we need to. I don't know if we'll come to that though at this point. Catalog, so a little more card selection here. But it is tying up mana to do it, and at this point we're starting to pull ahead, so the card draw might not matter as much. Okay. Our opponent can get rid of the Sim Prowler now. They probably should before our draw step. Or before our upkeep, I should say. What's tricky is we're still going to come down with a hasty Utes. Alright, so we draw yet another land, but we have some heat for sure. If I want to get greedy, I could discard the Use to the Neonite and play both the Use and the Wicker Witch this turn, but I'm not that concerned, quite honestly. I'd rather just hang on to the Neonite and play this a little slower, just in case I need a chump blocker or something. And we are down to 11 if our opponent plays something with haste or something. We just want to be prepared for extra creature coming down or something like that, but got our opponent down to 4 and their only creature can't block, so they're really going to need to hit something here. They did draw a couple cards last turn, so they may have something. They sure have enough mana. That's it. So they might not have been able to block our 2 creatures next turn, so they may have just given up. Might have drawn into some lands or something. They had 2 cards in hand. So, oh well, okay, that went fine. Sideboard. So, I think the Explosive Apparatus, I think if I were to redo this deck, I'd probably main deck it. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be when I first built the deck. We'll just take out the Neonite this time, since it's a little awkward with Skin Invader anyway. As we saw last game. I think that's good enough. Everything else is fine. Well, we only have the one land, so we're going to mulligan this. Gee, okay. We'll mulligan this, and we'll go down to 5. We are in the draw, and we do get to scry, so that's a thing. And this hand's actually not bad, and that makes it pretty good too. Now, I'd rather hit a land. Typically, I wouldn't put a spell on top in this situation, but it's such a good spell, and it might buy us some time, especially considering we have the Rancid Rats, which will also buy us time. And if we can survive long enough to get to reduce the Ash and Hounds, might be okay here, even with the 5 mulligans. So, it's probably our only chance really to win. Of course, we get another 5 drop. When it rains, it pours. Alright. This will protect us, at least, hopefully, against anything that our opponent drops. There's a land, which we desperately needed. Now that opens up to the slaughter, so that's cool. If our opponent plays something, we can to the slaughter it. If it's something that they can't attack through our Death Toucher, then even better. There's 2 things we can get around and buy us more time. Convicted Killer. Okay. There's a lot worse things. I'm not too worried about that, because we can stop that in a few ways. Alright, Sin Prodder was huge for us right here. Again, it just puts our opponent in this awkward situation. They're either going to have to take damage or give us more cards. Now we're a little short-landed. If we Sin Prodder a land, obviously our opponent's going to toss in the graveyard, which is a little awkward, but you can't forget we still get our draw step. So we have just as good of a chance of getting land as we always did, basically. So I don't think there's any real reason to hold back. Okay, so catalog into Fiery Temper Madness. They're going to get rid of the Sin Prodder. And I don't blame them. But the good news is we're kind of holding our own here, considering we went down to 5. And we're missing land drops. Alright, well, there you have it. So, again, a little bit awkward. Now our opponent has to decide whether they're just going to take the 1 damage, or if they're going to turn their 2/2, which potentially could be a 4/4, into a 3/4. But we also have to the slaughter, of course, which they don't know. So instead, they're just going to take some damage. And luckily, we drew another land. So now we're really just 1 land off of maybe being able to survive this. Because if we can get youths down... Hounds don't have Menace yet. Oh, there's our land. We did it. And our opponent played nothing, so... I don't know if they're flooded on land again. I don't know. Alright. So, they could have direct damage spell or something. But I kind of think they would have played it on the rats just to get the 3/4 creature if they did. But, I don't know. We'll go in for 5. And now that opens up a couple of things. If they play a threat, we have reduced the Ash. And if they don't... we have the Hounds. It's kind of crazy, actually. Epiphany, that's a good card. And Epiphany can do some work. Epiphany for 5. Let's see what happens. Alright, they hit 3 lands. The Whispers is not good. I feel like our opponent's going to want... I think this is what we're going to do. They either get 2 more lands and the flyer, or else they can take the... Yeah, I think that's good, because if they gain control of one of our creatures for 1 turn, that's fine. At this point, that's not going to kill us. Later in the game, it could kill us. So either give them that in the smaller flyer, or else let them take the potentially larger flyer. So... and they actually chose to take the potentially larger flyer, which I kind of thought they would. And that actually works out very well for us. Because either flyer that our opponent chose, we had an answer for it with reduced to Ash. Now, if they chose the other pile, they still would have had the ability to steal a creature and get some damage on us. And if they did have a discard outlet, they could blow us out a little bit with that, but I think they just needed board presence, so they were going for the bigger thing, which is probably what I would have done too. Wow. Got our opponent down to 8. We're 1 card off Delirium. And again, our opponent will probably get to play something. I mean, they have a lot of cards in their hand, 8 cards right now. And they're going to untap 2 lands. I didn't notice if they played. I don't think they played their land yet for the turn. So potentially they could play a 5-drop here, I believe. Yeah, there's their land. Okay, well, there's worse things than that, that's for sure. Well, that's a tad awkward. I mean, I'm just going to play the Hounds here. I would have liked to draw the 2 cards, but I don't want to discard the Hounds. I mean, granted, we might hit a Macabre Waltz or something, but it's just not worth that risk at this phase. I think we just need to keep the pressure on. You know, next time we draw a land, then wonderful. We're just going to draw some cards. Or we might get a Madness card. Okay. That is an answer. You know what? I'm just going to discard that because it doesn't do anything against the 2/3. And granted, it's a good card and it might help us later, but I want to win this game now since we're running out of gas and our opponent still has 4 cards in their hand. So we drew into some threats, so that's good. Now our opponent, if they decide to trade, then that's fine with me, and we'll just go ahead and throw a couple more threats down on the board over the next couple turns. Okay, Uncaged Fury, but you know what? I'd rather have them do that than hit me out of nowhere for like 8 points or something, so that's fine. If they use it to save their creature, that's probably one of the best situations for us when it comes to that card. And we still get a point of damage in. So we'll play our flyer here. I don't want to play the Pale Rider and discard the flyer, especially since the flyer is going to give us a little bit of evasion right now. So the Pale Rider might be the better play, but I'd rather try to do both. Opponent's coming in, we'll just simply take 2. I have no problem with that. So they must have a pretty big play here. They might have a couple creatures to put down. Reckless Scholar, that's good if this game can go a little longer, if our opponent can slow things down. And they get a creature that can't block, so okay, I'm alright with that. We get another Rancid Rats with Skulk, so it gives us more evasion. That Skin Invader has really been awkward for our opponent. Last game, it was on a Menace creature. This game, it's on a Skulk creature with 1 power. They just really can't find a way to get rid of it. It's just really an awkward situation in both games. Alright, so, I don't know, we got 4 damage on the board for next turn, right? Even 7 damage if they don't have anything that can block the Pale Rider. Oh, the Stitched, the Zombie can. Zombie's 2 power, so. But we still have 4 unblockable right now. Unless our opponent can do something about that. Okay, that's something. A little bit of a tempo play, and they do get a clue. So now next turn, best we can do is 2 damage. Turn in their clue. Sure. But our opponent's still on a 2-turn clock. I'm going to come in for 3 here. We're still at 18. I'm just going to take it. No sense trading. Alright, explosives, which they can't play until next turn. So the explosives can get rid of one of the rats, but granted that will give our opponent a 3-4, but they have no way of blocking the other rat. Wow, they want to get rid of the Pell Rider. It's really about all they can do because they can't block the rats. So our opponent's going to go down to 1, and now they really need to find an answer to the other rat to stay alive. Obviously, they can kill the one, get the 3-4 creature, but if they can't kill the other rat or get a 1 power creature on the battlefield to block it, they get to loot, and they're going to get another loot if they need it. And they do. Corrigible use. Okay, but still, I mean, they can hit us for 7. Eight, 9, 10. I think Explosive Apparatus can hit a player too, right? So that might be 11, 12, but still 3 short from lethal. Really needs that spell they played earlier. Give something double strike. Okay. Gets us down to 5, okay. But doesn't look like they have any combat tricks. Kindly Stranger, nice. Now we have, yeah, just enough mana to, yeah, play it and flip it. But we shouldn't need to. This should be lethal. Okay, yeah, our opponent kills the 1 rat. It's a 3-4 creature, but they can't deal with the other rat. I don't know if our opponent forgot about the Skulk. So that'd be great if it didn't have Skulk, then they could block the other rat with the Skin Shredder. But yeah, that's going to be it. Yeah, we got there. Okay, so, wow, mulligan to 5. We did pretty well that game. And it was close, though. I mean, we got down to 5, and if we couldn't win there, I don't think the Kindly Stranger would have been enough to protect us. But, hey, not bad. We're now 2-1, and I will see you in the next round. So, talk to you then, and thanks for watching.